Hey Brad, how's it going?
I'm doing great, Mark. How you doing?
Not bad. Happy 25th anniversary.
25th anniversary, hey?
That's right. 25 long years since we've seen a cup in Canada.
Far too long.
Far too long. Let's kick it off.
He shoots. He scores.
You're listening to The Neutral Zone with Brad and Mark. Coming at you from the land of the free.
Hello and good day. Welcome back, fans, folks, friends, anybody who might be listening to this. It's been a long time since our last podcast, but we're here and we're back.
Yeah, we're ready for the playoffs.
We've been holding out a long time so we could talk about this, eh?
Yeah, and regular season's over. Now the real season starts, right?
That's right. So
Yeah.
25th anniversary, 25 long years, like we said, since we've seen the cup back in Canada here.
Yeah. Montreal Canadiens, 1994, right?
93.
93, yeah.
Yeah. 5 teams to appear in the cup final since then. Vancouver was lucky enough to do it twice, in 94 and 2011. And then we had Calgary in 04. Flame fans all remember that.
Yeah,
And
the goal was in, man. The goal was in.
I know. You know, yeah, okay.
Yeah, we'll leave that one alone.
The Oilers, who also felt the sting of defeat in 06.
Yeah.
And the Senators in 07. The Senators people. They were there.
that was
And
a
they
tough
had a
one.
chance and they lost it.
Yeah, it was a tough one.
So it sucks. And now we've got 3 teams back in it this year.
Yeah, good shots, I think, for all 3 teams.
I agree.
Yeah,
Some have easier paths than others.
Yeah,
Others will.
yeah, it all depends. I think so. We'll see it. It'll be interesting playoffs for sure. And
That's right.
from a Canadian fan standpoint, I don't think it's been this exciting in a long time.
That's right.
Yeah.
For any Canadian hockey fan who's living under a rock, Calgary Flames, Winnipeg Jets, and the Toronto Maple Leafs folks
Yeah,
have secured their playoff spots. So at least for 3 teams, they can celebrate for a couple weeks more, maybe longer,
hopefully longer.
So this year's playoffs are shaping up to be, I think, one of the best, as we have some pretty high caliber matchups.
Yeah,
We have a couple of repeat matchups. We've got some teams in the finals this year who haven't been there in a long time.
yeah,
Carolina
some
Hurricanes.
surprises, right?
Have not been there since 2009, so
Yeah.
welcome back.
There you go.
They are now no longer the longest serving drought in the league.
And
That-
the bunch of jerks can bring their personality to the playoffs.
Yeah, it's rich and it's colorful and it's going to be awesome to have.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think we'll see any storm surges in the playoffs, but they definitely bring some personality in a team. Yeah, I don't know if everybody expected them to be there, so it'll be interesting to see how they do.
Absolutely. They absolutely seem pumped up. If anybody saw any of their Twitter videos online, they seem absolutely pumped to be there this year, and as you should be.
Yeah, yeah. And they're playing the Caps, I think, right?
They are,
Yeah.
which will be a very exciting series to watch.
Should be interesting. A lot of speed in that series, I think.
Absolutely. Built around speed. Hopefully, we have some upsets. I'm a huge fan of watching an upset.
And I would love to see how Tampa Bay does. I mean, they faced no real adversity throughout the year. They've had a near perfect season, so we'll see if anything happens for them in the playoffs. If it's a little more challenging, I guess we're going to find out.
Yeah, that's right. Tampa Bay tied the record for most wins in the regular season, 62 the other night.
That they did.
Congratulations to them. They tied the 95-96 Red Wings, who
Didn't make the Stanley Cup.
didn't make it.
No, Colorado won that year.
That's right. So
Like I said, the near perfect regular season doesn't guarantee you anything in in the when it comes to the playoffs. It's a whole new ball game.
That's right. So why don't we start right there? Let's talk about the Tampa Bay Lightning versus Columbus Blue Jackets.
Let's do it.
Okay, so here are two teams that met 3 times in the regular season. They won all 3 games very decidedly, 8-2, 4-0, and 5-1. From the regular season, I don't appear to have a matchup here. The only plus side I'll say to this all is their last time they played was back on February 13th.
And it's different teams now, right? Columbus added a few different guys, so that can make a big difference. However, I just don't see them being able to match up against Tampa. Tampa can just roll all their lines, and they can. I think they're going to roll over Columbus. What do you think?
Duchesne Dzingel came in for the last 20 games of the year, or 23 games of the year, and they were only able to put up about 12 and 13 points each-ish. They really haven't been the difference makers that Columbus thought they were acquiring, and they gave up a lot to try to get Duchesne on the team for that second line depth centerman, who I thought was going to be a fantastic fit, but he just still hasn't seemed to find a stride, and neither has Dzingel for all
intents and purposes. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah,
I wouldn't say it's a failed experiment. I will say that in the off season, if they're unable to sign those guys, they give up a lot. They give up a lot of picks, and if they lose those 2 guys along with Panarin and Bobrovsky, that could be disastrous for them. And to match up against Tampa in the first round, worst case scenario, because I think Tampa might find a challenge in the playoffs. I just don't think it's going to be the first round. I think Columbus is going to have a very tough time to even push it past 4 or 5 games.
I totally agree. Yeah, I wrote down that I think that Tampa is going to sweep this in the 4, and I don't think that many people go outside the 4 to 5 game margin anyway. When you look at Tampa Bay's projected lineups, the Stamkos, Palat, Point, Kucherov, Johnson, even their third line, Cirelli, Killorn, they're all great. Their fourth line has J2, Miller, Paquette, and Ernie on it, who have also been standouts.
It's very tough to find weaknesses in that roster.
Listen, they said that they got 62 wins under the belt. Now, this is not we've seen first-round upsets before. Back in 2011, when the Vancouver Canucks made the playoffs, they finished first overall with the President's Trophy in the West, and they lost out to the Los Angeles Kings. And I can't remember how many games, but just because you finished first overall doesn't mean anything.
That's right.
Columbus has a very good first line with Dubois, Panarin, and Cam Atkinson, who all 3 seem to just totally click. They are one of the best lines in the NHL, and now you got to hope that the second line with the Dzingel, Duchesne, and Josh Anderson start to really click. You need 3 or 4 lines in the playoffs that you can roll, and that you think or that can score. And they do have Foligno and Borgestand on the third line. So they do have some depth there. They were one of the better power play teams in the year. Their goaltending has struggled at times with Bobrovsky, right?
They've had an up and down season. It's just it's a matter of the fact that you're right. Depth is going to win the day in the playoffs, and it's going to come down to lots of times your first and second lines might get shut down by the other team. So it's what can your third and fourth lines do?
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Honestly, I see very few teams who could match up against Tampa 4 lines for 4 lines.
Yeah, if the Blue Jacks are going to win, they need to be aggressive forechecking. They have to put a wall up and play very tight defensive hockey against this team.
Definitely.
And Bobrovsky has got to return to the guy he was last year or the year before, where he put up stellar numbers.
And that's a scary. I don't envy Columbus whatsoever, because that's a scary first round matchup to have to go against. I don't even remember the last time we've seen a team finish with that many points. Obviously 62 wins, 128 points. Then to see their top scorer finish with the exact same points, 128 points for Kucherov, just unreal, right? And look for the guys behind him too. Then you got Point, like you said, you got Stamkos. It's just a laundry list of goalie killers on that team. So
what did they say? The last time a guy got 120 plus points in a season dates back to Mario Lemieux and Jaromir Jagr.
It might be.
When they put
unreal.
up like 160 points for Lemieux, 140-ish for Jagr. But that's the last time we've seen it.
It's a different era, too.
What Nikita Kucherov has done this year is really, really amazing. And it will go down in the history of their new era, the cap era of time, as one of the best performances.
Well, you think about it. Yeah, you think about it compared to the scoring rates in those years, right? When Gretzky was putting up all his points in the 80s and 90s, and Lemieux and Jagr, those were the days when goalies had goals against averages above 3, and that was good for a goalie. So it was a completely different era. So imagine if you put Kucherov and his talents, or guys like that, like a guy like McDavid, for example, if you put those guys back in those high scoring eras, who knows what they could have done? Who knows what type of points they would have put up? You got to take that into account. So yeah, Kucherov, what he did this year is extremely special.
So let's just go with the fact that maybe Columbus comes in with a slight, tiny edge in Game 1, because they have essentially been playing playoff hockey for some time now, battling in the closest race to the final playoff spot against the Montreal Canadiens, which went back and forth, right up until the very last game almost.
And that would be the only advantage I think they will have, yeah.
So hopefully they come out and they can steal one of the first 2 games and go back to Columbus with something.
Yeah, hopefully for them, for sure. So who are you picking in that series? How many games? What are you thinking?
I'm saying Tampa in 4. I can't even give Columbus a mercy win here.
I got to agree. I got to say Tampa in 4, unfortunately. As much as I'd like to see Columbus make a series of it, I just don't think it's going to happen.
I just think the last thing I want to say is I think Tampa's having a lot of fun playing as a team right now. You saw the way they did the VIP entrance into the locker room when they hit the 60-win club. And they're just having lots of fun. They're playing really well right now. Even the other night against Toronto when Tampa played, and I'm pretty sure they played at half steam, they still looked really good.
Yeah, it's going to be key is how close your team is.
It's going to be a tough one.
Yeah.
The next matchup we have here in the Eastern Conference we're going to talk about is another debated, very highly debated matchup coming up with the Boston Bruins and the Toronto Maple Leafs.
This is going to be one where half the battle is going to be for Toronto is going to be in the psyche. Boston is obviously in their heads. They're in their fans' heads. It's just, I think they match up well against each other. It's going to be a who can win that psyche battle, right?
You think this is a bit of a psychic thing? Did you know that the Boston Bruins have won 5 straight playoff appearances against the Maple Leafs dating back to 1969?
That's and it's a hard thing to overcome. Obviously none of the players who are on the team now have been involved in very many of those matchups, outside of maybe the one a few seasons ago where Boston came back and won it late in Game 7, right?
I think Toronto...
Is there anybody left on the team from that team? Riley was on the team at the time, I think. And
yes.
So yeah, there's a couple guys left.
Yeah. I think Toronto might have been a bit of the favorite going into the matchup last year, only because of their regular season record against them, which I think was 3-1. They actually dominated the Boston Bruins a little bit in the regular season, although those games were all very, very close. But this year it seems to have been a bit of a different story. Boston has won 3 games and only lost 1. They haven't played since January 12th, and so some things have changed about both teams.
Definitely.
The Toronto Maple Leafs have brought in Jake Muzzin on defense, and the Boston Bruins have brought in Marcus Johansson and Charlie Coyle to try to tighten up their third lines
Yeah, get some depth
there.
Depth scoring for them. And the thing there will be, I didn't go back and look at it, is how many of those wins, I don't know when Boston and Toronto face each other. You said last time was January. Boston went on that run where they won something ridiculous, like 17 games in a row or something, right? How many of them were in there? Because I think a lot of what has happened with Boston has been, and I'm not saying they're not a good team, they're a very good team, they're a scary team to be facing in the playoffs. They went on when you win 17 games in a row, or don't lose at least for 17 or 18 games in a row, that can skew it a little bit in terms of making you seem like you're a much more daunting team than you are sometimes. Or there's much more of a difference between the two teams, when really I don't think there's as much of a discrepancy between Boston and Toronto as is being made out, and maybe Toronto fans are feeling going in. It's more, like I said, just that getting over that psyche of, Boston has always beat us, right? And believing in themselves, believing in the fact that they can get over that hump. Just like Vancouver. I mean, they had that before they went to the Stanley Cup Finals that year. They lost to Chicago, like 2 or 3 times the previous seasons, and that was their big hurdle, was getting past the Chicago Blackhawks.
It's true. It'll be different compared to last year, because this is another rematch, right? Compared to last year, the differences that come to this playoffs, or to the Leafs, is they have now the key acquisition of John Tavares in the offseason. And if folks have, and I'm sure all Maple Leaf fans out there have, is they've looked up John Tavares and his playoff experience. And he has something like 22 games played with the New York Islanders and 22 points. Yikes. So he's coming in, and he's a proven benefactor to have in the playoffs. He's definitely always performed for the Islanders. Let's hope he can do it for the Leafs as well.
Yeah, and I think the key, actually, if you were gonna ask me what a key would be for the Leafs to win the series, I think it actually comes down to how William Nylander and Nazem Kadri do. I think that's going to be the big thing. I think you can have, like we talked about in the last in Tampa and Columbus, the depth is going to be the big thing. I mean, your key guys are going to be your key guys, whereas won and loss is going to be in that third and fourth lines against each other and up against the top lines, and how they shut each other down. So I think those two guys need to get their games going. And if they do that, and obviously that's been talked about in the media, that's no surprise. However, I do think that's going to be the big thing. And we'll also see, I mean, one of the concerns I had for the Leafs going down the stretch is, and I don't know, maybe you can give me your opinion on this, Mark. Do you think Freddie Anderson was tired? Do you think they've worn him out a little bit?
I think so, but I think that the coaches have kind of said to him, like, listen, like, we need you to keep warm, keep active out there. I think they really thought about giving him a couple more games off than they did down the stretch, but decided to kind of go back to back with him and Sparks. And now that kind of whole kerfuffle there, it is what it is. If Anderson isn't in goal for the Leafs, they stand a very hard chance, as I don't think that either backup goaltender can really compete with the likelihood of the guys out on the ice. But I think now that he's got 7 days off, maybe 5 days off or so.
Yeah, about 4 or 5 days.
I think that should be enough time for him to rest up. He's
rest.
A professional athlete. I think that'll be lots of time. And when the playoffs hit, the energy kicks back in.
For sure.
You find your game again. Another thing I was going to say is, when you're talking about the players and who's going to be the difference makers in a season, look no further than maybe Austin Matthews, maybe to step up his game a bit more this year. I think last year in the playoffs against the Boston Bruins, he might have only had a goal and an assist. So you need a line like that to step it up with Nylander. And I think really the difference in this series is, as long as Nylander or Marner and Tavares can keep their chemistry going throughout the year into the playoffs, I think they are going to be the big. If they get shut down, the Maple Leafs are going to hurt.
That's the big thing for them. Yeah, how well can Boston shut that team down? And
Marner
That's
had
good.
really good success against the Boston Bruins last year in the playoffs. So
Yeah, we'll see. And that big line for Boston, obviously being Bergeron, Marchand, and Pasternak. It's going to be a tall task too for Toronto to shut them down. Although, I mean, like I said, I think that it's a toss-up of a series. I see it going 7 games, and I'm picking Toronto to win in a very, very tight series because I think that like I said, they match up well. Both have good goaltenders. I think the defensive edge would go to Boston, and I think the offensive edge will go to Toronto. So I think it'll be a very interesting give and take in that series. But like I said, I'm picking Toronto to win in 7.
yeah, I think that I have got I've got Toronto winning this one in 6.
Okay.
And I truly believe that their depth of scoring will come out this year and be a bit of a redemption for them. I think they all want it. They're really deep. Their third line is Patrick Marleau, Nazem Kadri, and Kasperi Kapanen. Kapanen's speed burned the Boston Bruins last year, and Patrick Marleau was a difference maker last year against the Boston Bruins as well.
Yeah, he brings a lot of experience for them.
Nazem Kadri also served a bit of suspension last year in those playoffs and missed a couple games. So he'll be looking to be in full-time this time. Full-time. And I guarantee you that guy is coming out with energy.
And his game's made for the playoffs. He's that type of player.
Some players just come out in the playoffs.
Yeah, their style's made for it.
Exactly. I think Frederik Andersen is going to be the difference maker in net for him this year. He doesn't want another Game 7 potential to hang over his head.
Yeah.
I think they will win it in Game 6 at home.
Sounds good. All right, well, who's next? Moving on.
Next on our list, we are moving on to the Washington Capitals and the Carolina Hurricanes.
Like we talked about earlier, this will be an interesting series.
This is a very interesting one, I think, and I think this one will be very, very pleasant to watch. Even though Washington swept the regular season series 4-0.
When's the last time they played? Did you check that out?
Last time they actually played was March 28th.
So not that long ago.
When Washington won 3-2. Washington out the last 20 games have been on just a dominant force. They've gone 15-4-1, I believe, in their last 20 games. And Braden Holtby has looked much, much better in the last 11 games or so. He's been playing really phenomenal hockey. Should we be worried that the Washington Capitals might be returning to last year's form again?
I think so. I think, you look at a team like Washington, and not just at last year, you look at the last, say, 5, 6, 7 years for Washington. And I think the lesson that they learned is they were always perennial favorites to win the Cup. They were winning the President's Trophy all the time. I think they learned that isn't necessarily the key to success. You don't have to win the President's Trophy, obviously, to win the Stanley Cup. I think it's actually better and that's what I'm thinking about Tampa. Like I said, I think they'll win their first round series, but I'm not sold on the fact that they're just going to roll over everybody and win the Stanley Cup in 20 games or something like that. I think that winning the President's Trophy is a little bit of it's almost, I wouldn't say curse, obviously. It's nice to win that and get home ice advantage for the whole playoffs. I just think what Washington has done is they've learned when to empty the tank and when they need to be on their game. And like you said, they're rolling coming into the playoffs. That's a scary proposition for the defending Stanley Cup champions, a team that has the experience, that knows what they're doing. They know how it feels, ups and downs. Like, look at how it went their first round last year. Columbus went up 2-0 on them last year, and they stormed back and won, right? So I think that playoff experience is going to be the big difference in this series. I think Carolina is a very good team. I just think that Washington in the end is going to have that experience come out, and Ovechkin's going to take over the series, in my opinion, and it's just going to be too much for Carolina.
Yeah, well, I think where Carolina has found their success this year has been their willingness to score goals and always putting the puck in net. They were first in the league with an average of 34 shots.
They take a lot of shots
a game, and they shoot not just from anywhere, folks, but if you really map out their shots, They really get a lot of pucks to the inside. Now, they are always just trying to put the puck on net, no doubt. But there are a lot of quality shots to be taken out of that. And they have shown to have some of the higher scores in the league now this year. Carolina's back in the playoffs for the first time since 2009. So they're all really pumped up.
Their fans are pumped. I don't know if you saw that video of their fans' reaction to find out they were in the playoffs, that they clinched. Did you see that video?
Oh, yeah.
They were losing their minds, right? I mean, they're pretty pumped. And, I mean, it's good to see. Hopefully they can make a series out of it. I don't know. So what do you think is going to happen?
Well, I mean, I think the difference maker here, and unfortunately I hate saying this because it sounds so cliche, but it's going to be coming down to their goaltending, I think. And they've never had a true number one, and I'm talking about Carolina Hurricanes. They've never had a true number one this year. They've bounced between 4 different goalies, I think, at the start, and now they're down to 2 different guys, and Peter Mrazek and Curtis McElhaney, who's both played amazing hockey.
You know who they remind me of? Actually, and you know what? So I shouldn't say that I should just write them off so easily, because you know who they remind me of?
Who's that?
Is the Calgary Flames of 2004. That team that they don't have any huge stars outside of maybe 1 or 2 guys, but they've really come together as a team. Obviously, that storm surge was a big thing. I mean, whether you like that or not, it was a good sign of a team that was coming together and really bonding. And they just have a bunch of guys who almost, you wouldn't want to say they have chips on their shoulders, but they're almost like they were tossed away from their previous teams, right? Like you look at a Justin Williams, you look at a Mrazek, McElhaney. They're guys who maybe were written off a little bit, and they have something to prove, So that's a dangerous combination when you have a group like that who has something to prove.
It definitely could be. And Mrazek won the starting job in the last 13 games of the regular season, going 11-2 with a 1.68 goals against average and a .944 saves percentage.
That's insane.
Which is really, really good.
Yeah.
I mean, they definitely got a puck-moving defense. They can keep tempo with Washington, I believe. And, like I said, Carolina has scoring depth. They got Aho, Williams, Teravainen, Svechnikov. All those guys had plus 20 goals. Aho with 30, But then they're also up against another very scary depth scoring team who's had 7 20-goal scorers on their team. They almost have one on every single line of theirs, and I'm sure if they wanted to, they can mix it up a little bit and have that for themselves. Brett Connolly is a 20-goal scorer on the third line. I mean, the depth is amazing. They've really spread out this offense. And kudos to who's the head coach here?
Is it Rod Francis?
Oh, Rod Brindamore.
Rod Brindamore with Rod Francis. Yeah, Rod Brindamore.
Will be making his first playoff experience as a head coach.
Should be interesting. I mean, he's got some experience going the distance as a player, right? Mm-hmm. So we'll see what he can do with that team. And honestly, for Carolina, I think a key for them could be Michael Furland. I've watched Michael Furland in the playoffs and what he can do for a team. And if he brings that edge, if he can still bring that, that gritty edge and get under guys' skin, he'll play that same role that Nazem Kadri will play for the Leafs, right? Where he distracts the other team with some of the antics he can do and the hits he can lay. And that might open up some ice that's why their first line had some success earlier in the season when he was on it, right?
Right.
Because he was opening up ice for the other 2 guys. And and he's talented enough to skate with those types of guys and pot, and he's a 20-goal scorer too. So a good guy that could change a series with emotion. So it'll be interesting. I mean,
I think it's definitely going to be a high-scoring series.
I think so.
I don't think that the goaltending is going to be the difference.
I don't think so.
I said it should be because that Carolina needs goaltending at some points to keep him in this.
Yeah,
but
this
I still
series,
think
though,
that it's going to be a high-scoring series.
I think if they make it past Washington, it'll become a little more important. I think, though, with Washington, they might trade chances, and we'll see what happens.
I think Washington wins in 7. What do you think?
I'll pick Washington in 6.
6?
I think they'll do it in 6. I think Carolina will make a series of it, but I don't think it'll be a 7-game series. So
fair enough.
Yeah.
Moving on. We got one more matchup we got to look at in the East, I believe. And we are going to end it off there with the New York Islanders and the Pittsburgh Penguins, who had a incredible regular season series to watch. If there's any Penguin fans or Islander fans listening, you guys hate one another. I'm sure of it already. And from what we saw in the regular season, we're in for one heck of a playoffs series as they tied it with 2 wins apiece and 1 overtime loss and 1 regulation loss. So 4 games in total. Islanders are going to make their first appearance since 2015, so it hasn't been as long for them. But they're up against the Pittsburgh Penguins, who have made it to the playoffs 13 consecutive years.
And you can never count the Penguins out, despite how they finish in the regular season.
Bit of experience out on the ice
Just
there.
a bit, just a little bit, right? I mean, a couple cups in the last few years. I mean, they got a little bit of experience.
Interesting fact I was reading, but Matt Murray came in and played the last 11 games or something like that with the Pittsburgh Penguins or something like that back in 2015 or something like that when they won the Cup.
I think that might have been the year. I can't remember what year 2016, 2017, something like that.
He was a rookie goalie to do it. And then in their last year that they won it, in their back-to-back years when Matt Murray helped them again, he was also a rookie goalie. So he won the Cup as a rookie twice.
Oh, that's right, because he didn't play enough games to
That's right.
qualify past the... That's got to be a bizarre stat. It's probably never been done before.
I don't think so.
Wow.
So we definitely have Matt Murray starting in net for the Pittsburgh Penguins. And he will be going up against an incredible duo. I don't know who you or how you pick who starts for the New York Islanders, with Robert Lehner and Thomas Greiss basically splitting the duties all year long.
Both playing outstanding.
Lehner had a 2.13 goals against average with 6 shutouts, and Greiss had a 2.28 goals against average with 5 shutouts.
That could be huge for them in the playoffs.
I think either one of those guys could be a number 1 on a team here this year.
Oh, definitely. I think you'll see one of them traded in the offseason, so we'll see what happens. But then you'll find out whether it's whether they're a byproduct of a good system and good defense, or whether it's them, right?
That's right. And obviously the Islanders are one of the best teams in the regular season. Defensively. They were, let me take a look here really
I think they're
quick.
tied for second for the least goals, like 221 or something like
They're
that.
first in goals against at 2.33.
2.33 a game, eh?
However, their goals per game is 2.72, which is good for 22nd in the league.
That's their problem.
So they got a bit of a problem scoring. However, they went out in the offseason and acquired one of the best coaches they could for this season right here, Barry Trotz.
Yeah, he can. I mean, you don't see very many coaches that can be game changers, and he's one of them, right?
And Barry Trotz knows the Pittsburgh Penguins better than anybody, I would imagine. Maybe just as good as the Pittsburgh's head coach.
That's for sure. I mean, he faced him in all those years, right? I mean, with Washington, and so he'll know that team inside and out. So it'll be a very intriguing matchup. And I think that honestly, the key to that series to me won't necessarily be any certain player. Obviously, when you have players like Malkin and Crosby and that type of guy, those types of guys in the series, they're always dangerous to be the difference maker. I honestly think the key to that series is going to be who scores first in each game.
Who scores first?
Yeah, if Pittsburgh scores first in any of those games and can get ahead, can get a lead of 2 goals or more, I think that
which they're very capable.
They're very capable of scoring in bunches, right? I mean, they got, like I said, they got Crosby, they got Malkin, they got Kessel, and beyond that, they have really great depth, right? So I think it's honestly, if they get ahead in games, it'll be tough for New York to come back against that experience, and obviously being one of the lower scoring teams. So the key for New York, I believe, is getting ahead early and protecting those leads and just grinding it out.
I fully agree with you, and I exactly think that's the way they're going to have to play. That's the way they played all year.
Yeah.
That's their system. They got to be able to stick to it limit the Penguins' scoring chances, they have to stay out of the penalty box.
For sure.
As Pittsburgh has 2 power play units that they can roll, and it's a 1A, 1AA type situation there.
Yeah, they're dangerous on the power play for sure.
The Islanders, they have not been able to find their scoring touch all year, although Matthew Barzal, hasn't looked like it's his rookie self, but that kind of seems to be an expected thing.
Yeah, sophomore jinx, right?
And has come along very well. Anders Lee, he leads the team in power play goals with 12, I believe, or so. So a key thing will be making sure that they capitalize on any power play chances they get.
For sure. So who are you picking?
Oh, I really went back and forth about this one. Who did you pick?
I'm going to say Pittsburgh in 6.
I said New York Islanders in 7.
Did you?
Yeah, I did.
Okay, well, there we go. That's a good one. It'll be one of those series. It could go either way. And I think, like I said, it'll be Pittsburgh in 6. But very well, I wouldn't be surprised if it was the other way around.
They haven't played each other since December 10th either. So it really has been a long road. And neither team did really anything at the trade deadline or along the way to make their teams They
both stood pat for the most part, yeah.
Anything
depth
significantly
moves.
Different, yeah. A couple of depth
Pittsburgh.
moves for Pittsburgh, but nothing for the Islanders. So I think this is going to be a very interesting series to watch as well. They kind of have a bit of a funny swap there from going to the Nassau Coliseum back to their new Coliseum for the Islanders and their playoff
Brooklyn,
run and things like that.
It's going to be funny.
But I think their barn will be hopping. They're excited. The fans seem to be excited. They don't seem to miss Tavares.
I think that
All that much.
Tavares leaving has been kind of almost like a catalyst for those fans. I don't care really how you support your team, I guess. If it's out of anger that some guy left and that's driving you to support your team even more, then hey, more power to you, right?
I hope they find peace. That's all.
Yeah, find peace, Islanders fans. It's okay. Everything's going to be all right. Let's all move on. It's done, and hopefully they got that out of their system and they can move forward. I don't think that'll be the case. I think as long as Tavares comes back whenever he comes back, they're going to be on him. It is what it is, though.
It's going to take about 5 years, I think,
before all the hard feelings are gone.
I think so.
Yeah, so we'll see. But no, so that's who I'm picking. I guess you want to move on to the Western Conference.
Sure, let's start at the top of the list here. Let's talk about who finished first overall and won the President's side in the Western Conference. That's the Calgary Flames. Congratulations to the Calgary Flames.
Yeah,
for
good on
finishing
them.
First time they break in the 50-win column since 88-89.
We know what happened that year.
Which is when they won 54 games, and we know that they won the Stanley Cup.
You bet.
So that is good on them, and I'm sure they all have heard the story from the 88-89 Stanley Cup winning team by now.
Oh yeah, they've been. I think as a team they've been playing off that pretty heavily over as the season's wound down, right? And first time that they've won the Pacific in 13 seasons, I think, and first time they've won the Pacific Division in 29 years. So
yeah,
that's a lifetime for. A lot of NHL fans aren't even 29 yet. So
that's right.
Not a lot of people haven't seen the Flames in first overall in the West in a long, long time.
Bill Peters making his playoff debut.
Yeah,
there's another guy.
Great coach. Another one of those candidates for, again, another little wrinkle this year that's been bizarre is how many guys there are up for the Jack Adams Trophy. Like how many coaches could really make a case, whereas in any year that I can remember previous, there's always 2 or 3 guys who it's pretty clear these are the guys who are going to compete for that Coach of the Year award. Mm-hmm. This year, and Bill Peters being one of them, obviously John Cooper down in Tampa obviously having a pretty solid case for that Coach of the Year. But there's a lot of guys. I think there's about 6 or 7 or 8 different coaches who could really make a case for being Jack Adams. Bill Peters being one of them.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, he's led an incredible squad all year long to an outstanding year.
Yep.
And now they get to face the Colorado Avalanche, who have kind of came into the playoffs on a bit of a hot streak.
Yeah, they've been tearing it up lately.
And look a little dangerous, no?
I think so. I think that the knock against Colorado is definitely their depth scoring. However, if you look at their top line, it's pretty tough to find any top line that's better than that top line when they're going and when they're all healthy, right? I mean, they've missed Rantanen in the last 8 or 9 games of the season. But, I mean, that's a tough line to match up against. I think that's going to be key to the series for the Flames if they want to win it, is they need to shut down that top line and score themselves, obviously. So, and in terms of Colorado, I think the key is the opposite, making sure that line gets the time and space that they need, right? However, I think this is a very interesting matchup. I think Colorado is a better team right now than their 8th place finish maybe shows. They're heating up at the right time. So, yeah, I don't think it's as cut and dry as maybe the 1 and 8 seeds suggest. So, what are you thinking?
I don't think it ever should be so cut and dry. That's for sure. Anything can happen in the playoffs, like we always say.
Whole new season.
But the Calgary Flames, they dominated the regular season. They had their ups and downs, just about like every other team in the league.
Outside of Tampa?
Outside of Tampa, who is a special breed.
Like they were robots, basically, you know?
But I think that it really comes down to, I think everybody's got Calgary picked as the favorites, and obviously they should.
I would say so, yeah.
Avalanche have been missing Mikko Rantanen for the last 8 games of the season here, but still managed to go on a pretty impressive stretch in the time that they're an impressive record.
Yeah.
And the time he's missed.
8-1-2 in their last 11 games.
Yeah. They say he should be ready for game 1. So
they're hoping, yeah. So
they're hoping so, and I think that their keys to success is that top line of Rantanen, Landeskog, and McKinnon have to stay healthy and play together, and that seems to have been a bit of a hard thing to do for them since about the middle way of the season. That line was on fire at the beginning.
Yeah.
But then injuries kept Landeskog out for a little bit.
They moved him around apart from each other a little bit.
Rantanen got injured.
Yeah.
There's just been kind of gaps here and there. A big thing now will be the Avalanche's defense and goaltending as to whether they can slow down the potent offense of the Calgary Flames.
And the one thing the Flames can boast for sure, I mean, obviously they're one of the best possession teams in the game. If you look at their analytics numbers, which I know some people don't buy into necessarily, but if you look at how they possess the puck, I mean, they're one of the best. I think they're top 5 in a lot of categories, top 10 in almost every other one that they're not top 5 in. So they have that. They move the puck well, they possess it well, and they just come at you in waves, right? Their depth is unreal. They went out and they made sure that was a point of making sure that they addressed that in the offseason, and they did. I think their 4th line center being Derek Ryan, who can move up and down the lineup, was the 2nd best face-off center, something like the 5th best possession center in the game this year. So that depth they have, that is the one. I think that's the big advantage they have over Colorado, is if their top lines are both neutralized by the other team's second line or checking line, it all is going to come down to how that the 2nd, 3rd, or 4th lines can roll for each team, and I think that's definitely an advantage for Calgary. What are you thinking? Calgary
is kind of limped into the playoffs. The only minus thing about the Calgary Flames here, and I really stopped there on a bad note saying limped into the playoffs. Where they limped into the playoffs was in their special teams.
Yes.
Where in the final month here, March, they only converted on 6.1% of their chances.
Yeah.
Where Avalanche have been really good on the power play.
Firing on all cylinders.
Where they're 7th in the NHL with 22%. So if Calgary continues to be mediocre on their power play and the Avalanche really capitalize on their chances, and I could see a lot of power penalties be going both ways just because how both teams are built for speed. And people tighten it up, but sticks get in the way, and there's always lots of the tripping and hooking penalties as these lines drag out. They're on the ice for too long or whatever, right? So if the Avalanche can keep on top of the power play and Calgary continues to struggle, there might be a bit of a glimmer of a hope there for Colorado, but their penalty kill needs to be better in Colorado. They were 25th in the NHL this season at 78%.
Yes, we'll see. I think it's going to be a very interesting series, and I'd give the advantage to Calgary in most areas, which you would expect for the first overall team in the West. I don't think it's going to be easy, though. I think it'll be a dogfight for sure. So who are you picking?
I'm picking Calgary in 5. I'm
Yeah.
giving one win to the Colorado Avalanche.
And I'm going to say in 6. I'm going to say Calgary in 6.
Who do you think's going to be the starting goaltender, by the way, for Calgary?
Mike Smith.
Mike Smith?
If you look at his record over the last several games, he started out horribly in the beginning of the season. His first 13 games were terrible. I saw a tweet a while back, and it was like over 3.3 or 3.4 was his goals against average. But since then, and his record was mediocre. Since then, I think he was in the low 2s. I think 2.35 was his goals against average at the last half of the season, and he was 9-12 save percentage. So, I mean, he's really turned it around. And I think Riddick is a good bet for them too. So I think they have a good goaltending tandem. I know there's some unproven aspects to that goaltending. I mean, Riddick's essentially almost a rookie, and Smith. I mean, there's a lot of talk of is he past his prime? But I think they'll be okay. I think Smith is definitely the starter for them to begin with, and we'll see how it plays out from there.
We'll go with that.
Yeah.
Up next on the docket, we're going to head down the list to the San Jose Sharks, who get to face off against the Golden Knights. It's
That's going to be a doozy.
A rematch of last year, except instead of meeting in round 2, we're doing it one round earlier.
And these two teams, I think, are going to beat up on each other.
Oh,
and if you're a fan of any other Western team, that's a good thing.
It is going to be a bloodbath.
Yeah. Did you see the last game between them in the regular season?
No, I didn't.
Oh, they were getting ready to face each other. It was intense.
Well, that was a 4-3 overtime winner for San Jose.
It was, yeah.
And I'm sure it was very chippy. They split their regular season series 2 games apiece, going back and forth, beating up on each other. Vegas wins the first one 6-0. San Jose comes back, wins 3-2. Vegas takes the next one 7-3, and then San Jose wins the last one in overtime 4-3. This one, I don't want to know who you picked yet, but it's going to go a full 7 games.
Oh, I think it's 7 games, definitely.
This year, the difference for the Vegas Knights will be that they have 3 new faces to put out there who are pretty well known, and Mark Stone, who's been a pretty good acquisition. 11 points in 18 games. However, kind of started off slow, which I think anybody who kind of thought about it, knew that would happen, going from the east to the west. New system, new team. You don't see a lot of those players a lot.
Takes some time. Yep.
So he's definitely been better. Max Pacioretty, who started off the season slow. But this line right here of Paul Stastny, by the way, being the other new face, of Stone, Pacioretty, and Stastny, I think has to be their number 1 line.
Oh, that's a scary line too. And as long as they can stay healthy, right? Stastny lost quite a bit of the season to injury. That's when you talk about that line, it's surprising that they kind of limped into the playoffs themselves with losing quite a few of their last few games. Same as San Jose, both teams are coming in not particularly doing very well, and it'll be interesting to see how they do against each other, right? I mean, I don't know if you heard, is Erik Karlsson back for the Sharks? And I haven't watched the last
Erik Karlsson did come back.
Did he? Okay.
I believe. Yeah. Where did I write this down here? I think he was back.
So that could be a game changer for them, having him back, right? As well as Pavelski. Pavelski was out a little bit, so
he came back and played the last game of the season. That's right.
If they're healthy, they can definitely make a run for it.
Erik Karlsson definitely needs to be in the lineup for them. When he went down with his injury in early January, San Jose went on a really good run without him, and looked like they could still be a very dominant team without them. And rightfully so, they should. Last year, that was the big piece that they were missing, and they were still very good. The question now is he 100%? Did they keep him out long enough to be 100%? It was a groin injury.
And those are tough.
Which are very tough, and has proven to be so for Erik Karlsson.
Especially for a defenseman that has to, pivot and turn and skate backwards a lot. I mean, that's a tough injury. For goalies and defensemen, I mean, for any player, especially for those two positions, though, it's a tough injury to overcome, right? And every guy reacts differently, so we'll see. If they have Erik Karlsson only at like 50 or 60%, that isn't a good sign. And, the big thing for San Jose is they're not exactly the best defensive team. They got some big names on defense, but their top two guys are both those offensive guys that aren't necessarily known for their defense, right? Erik Karlsson and Brent Burns are great. They're good defensemen. They're great defensemen. It just sometimes in their own zone they can get running around a little bit, and then goaltending. Like you said before, that's kind of cliche and almost like the easy out to say this is going to be the difference maker in the series is goaltending. I think it's going to be key. If Fleury's healthy, they have a huge advantage in goal because Aaron Dell and Jones have not been fantastic this season for San Jose, so that's a big Achilles heel for them.
No, they haven't. In the last 11 games of the year, the San Jose Sharks went 8-2-1 and allowed 45 goals against.
2-8-1 or
2-8-1.
2-8-1. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, they had a tough end of the season, so.
But they do have lots of scoring,
and they have experience, right? That's the big thing. I mean,
they do.
You look at the fact that a guy like Evander Kane has gone there, and with all the controversies that he's had follow him around in his career, that's the one dressing room that was probably the best place for him to go as a player because you have big personalities like Joe Pavelski, like Jumbo Joe Thornton and Brent Burns, guys who are such, like I said, such big personalities that he had to check his ego at the door. I think that was a big thing for him.
Yeah, I think
so. It's been key for his resurgence, right?
I think guys like Thomas Hertl and Evander Kane, they're going to be your energy guys.
For sure.
They're going to be kind of those different mixers. Joe Thornton was a guy who missed the playoffs last year. He was unable to participate because of a knee injury or elbow injury or something like that. But he missed last year's playoffs for this series, which Vegas won in 6. I don't know if we mentioned that.
Yeah.
But Joe Thornton now, being 40 years old, this is kind of a bit of a storyline to follow as well.
Could it be his last hurrah?
Could it be his last hurrah? Is this the last chance for old Joe Thornton to win one? And I believe he's a player that deserves to have one as well, right? But
yeah, and he's one of those players who very well, I mean, with my pick, I'll go ahead and get out of the way. I'm picking Vegas in 6 games again. I love that 6-game mark. But
it's funny how we stressed the 7-game mark, but you picked 6, and I picked 6 as well.
Actually, yeah, we did stress 7, but thinking of it, honestly, I think that Vegas will just. It all depends. I think Vegas is going to win it no matter what. In my opinion, I think it'll go 7 if Fleury's not on his game. If he's on his game, they'll be able to end it a game earlier. And having him is going to be the key. Having him going. And, it's going to be, like I said, it's going to be a very interesting series to watch in terms of how rough it's going to be when you have Ryan Reeves on one side and Evander Kane on the other side. And Joe Thornton and guys like that, big guys who like to throw the body around. These are two physical teams, so it's going to be very interesting to watch.
I love the Vegas Knights defense from top to bottom. I love McNabb, Schmidt, Holden, Theodore, Miller. Those are all guys I'm fans of. I think they're all great defensemen, and I think they stand out really well.
No huge names, right?
Fleury. None of them huge, but they are all very solid defensemen.
Solid defensemen, yeah.
And the depth that they have, let's not forget about Jonathan Marchessault, or William Karlsson, who was big time last year for them, and Riley Smith. Even their third line, who has Cody Eakin, Ryan Carpenter, and Alec Tuck, who have also been great for them.
And I'm just so surprised that they lost. They had such a dip at the end. They haven't been very good going into the playoffs either. So, and I think a part of that is that Fleury was out for a little bit of time, and they were relying on Subban, right? But I mean, I think that's a scary team going in, and that was a big key when you were watching that Western race with the Flames and San Jose, battling for that top spot. Is whichever team got it, which ended up being the Flames, don't have to face Vegas in that first round, right? So
that's right. Well, if the Sharks are gonna win it, they need to have the goaltending
for sure. If the Sharks win, it'll be in 7 games.
And Burns and Karlsson need to be healthy, obviously, and produce for them.
Yeah.
If the Knights are gonna win, they need Fleury to be on his AAA game, as he seems to bring to every playoffs he's in. They also need to stay out of the penalty box and avoid the Sharks' power play as well.
Yeah. But yeah, like I said, I'm picking Vegas in 6. If San Jose does win, it will take 7, I think.
I got Vegas in 6, but I can see this one going to 7.
I can see it too.
So easily.
It'll be one of those. I don't think it'll be any quicker than that.
That's right.
So
let's move on. The next one we got on the list here is the Nashville Predators against the Dallas Stars.
Ooh, interesting matchup.
Which is a very interesting dark horse matchup that I don't think many people have thought about unless you're fans. But when you start to dive into it a little bit, there is some key stories here to watch.
Yeah, I mean, go ahead. You were going to say something there?
Well, Dallas head coach Jim Montgomery.
Yeah.
He's making his first playoff experience. Matt Zuccarello, who came over and made a hell of a appearance in his
goal,
first
one
two
assist.
Yeah, first two periods, and then unfortunately broke his arm.
Yeah.
He's missed every game since then, except he played one game a couple games ago, and now they've had him sit out the last 2 as well. I think they wanted to just make sure he was ready to go.
Yeah.
And then sat him, obviously, as he seemed to be a very, very good fit with them. So he's going to be a difference maker there. On the Nashville Predators side, they brought in Wayne Simmons and Mikko Granlund,
Yeah.
who have kind of skunked the bed on them. Simmons only 3 points in 17 games, and Granlund only 5 points in 16 games.
And honestly, I
do we make anything of that?
Granlund surprises me. I thought he would do better. If people were expecting Wayne Simmons to do better than that offensively, I think you were buying into the wrong Wayne Simmons. I think 3, 4, 5 years ago, yeah, he could. You would have expected more from him. But what Wayne Simmons brings will come out in the playoffs. He'll bring that grit and that big difference in terms of getting in guys' faces, being in front of the net. I mean, playoffs is a different game, right? And I think he's built for that, and we'll see if he has enough left in the tank for another run. I think he will. But I think it's a lot closer. I mean, Nashville's one of those funny ones, right? Because the past couple of years, they've been the toast of the West. And then this year, they just, for whatever reason, whether it's wrong chemistry or a lot of games in the playoffs, so they're tired over the last several years. They're just not quite the Nashville we've seen the last couple of years.
Yeah, well, I wonder.
And Dallas has been good. And Dallas is kind of like New York Islanders West. They don't score a ton of goals, but they can shut you down. And Ben Bishop, if he's on his game and he's and healthy, he's been unreal for them this year. So they could be a surprise team. If I'm picking a surprise team out of the West, it's Dallas.
Yeah, I mean, just going off your note about Ben Bishop, he's been absolutely amazing for them. In the playoffs, Ben Bishop has one of the best records ever. With 36 games, he's got a record of 21-13 with a 2.09 goals against average and a save percentage of .927 and 5 shutouts. He's been awesome in the playoffs for any team he's been with. And the regular season, he had a 1.98 goals against average.
He's just, everybody kind of forgot about Ben Bishop. He moved from Tampa to LA.
Totally.
And then signed with Dallas, and people just kind of forgot about him.
Yeah.
He was one of those guys who he's never been bad. And it's funny that way. I mean, it's almost like people discount it. And part of that has to do with Dallas' struggles early in the year. I mean, it's well documented what their, I think it was the president said, right? I mean, about how both Ben and Sagan and going public with those comments, it was a huge controversy.
Oh,
so
yeah, you're
I
right.
think St. Louis and Dallas are very similar too in the fact that they had such a terrible start to the season that people were writing them off. And I mean, St. Louis almost blew it up and we'll talk about them here in a few minutes. And they've both just have quietly put together solid second halves of the year and come right back into it. I mean, St. Louis was right in the mix for the top in the Central. If they'd had a better start to the year, they probably would have finished first in the Central ahead of Winnipeg and Nashville. So Dallas they're not an easy out. And I've watched them play a few teams lately. They clog up that neutral zone. They shut teams down, and they're good at neutralizing the speed of some of the other teams. So.
Well, now they'll have two good lines to roll with as well, with Sagan and Radulov on the top line, and Ben and Zuccarello on their second line.
Yeah.
So they can go a lot deeper than that. I like Cogliano and Fasca, Nishushkinen, and Jason Spezza is your fourth line. And Spezza, is an old boy there,
yeah,
now,
he can pot a couple.
but he can still be a difference maker when it comes to playoffs as well. He's got experience there.
It's going to be a good matchup, and you know what? Two really good goalies. Pecorine still has some gas left in the tank, I think. So I think it's going to be a low-scoring battle between those two teams. I think it's going to be very interesting.
Yeah, and if Pekka Rinne struggles, they have a great backup goaltender that they're always going to be able to go back on.
Yeah.
And that's Saros, who kind of struggled throughout the year, but he's also proven himself as well and will one day be the starting goaltender, if it's not for the Predators, for another team.
Yeah. So who are you picking?
I got Dallas in 7 in this one. I think that if Dallas can get the scoring going to go along with their goaltending, they are going to be a very hard team to beat.
Yeah, and you know what? I was going to go Dallas, but I'll just to make it interesting and keep it a little light between us, or different. I'll go Nashville, I think, in 7.
Okay.
I'll say Nashville. It's going to go 7 games, I think.
Ooh, we'll have to go back and write these down and make sure we keep it.
Yeah, we're going to see who was more right.
Okay, we'll head back to our last. We'll head to the last matchup now.
Yeah.
That I think is a lot of fan favorites here. And that will be the Winnipeg Jets against the St. Louis Blues, who played awesome through the regular season against each other, where the Jets won that series 3-1. However, all these games were December 7th, which is post date of when the St. Louis Blues took off, which was when their studying goaltender Jordan Bennington took over.
Yeah.
And tore it up, going 24-5-1.
So wait, they haven't played each other since December the 7th?
No.
Both being in the Central, they played each other all at the beginning of the year.
Yep.
That is unreal. I don't think I've ever seen that I don't know. I guess I just haven't paid enough attention, but
if anybody looks at the regular season schedule and goes, "Oh, Jets won 3-1," and brushes off and moves on,
you're in for
you're in for a lie, because if Jordan Bennington can keep this up,
wow,
which he has been phenomenal, a 1.89 goal against average,
yeah,
and 5 shutouts in 31 starts since January 7th is phenomenal.
Yeah.
Tarasenko has climbed back in and has been resurrected
out of nowhere
to lead the team with 30 goals, I believe. They've also had Braden Shen and all the other players start stepping up.
Ryan O'Reilly has been a big...
Ryan O'Reilly has been a very consistent player for them all year long.
And they're a big team too, right? They have a lot of talent, but they're a big team, so they can cycle the puck. This is another one of those series. Those top 3 Central teams, and then Dallas. So there's 4 Central teams, I guess, right? That's a very intriguing matchup in both of those series. We already talked about Nashville, Dallas. Those could go either way. Those are.
Yeah.
I mean, Winnipeg. If you were to ask somebody at the start of the year if it was Winnipeg and St. Louis in a series, who would win? I think most people would have picked Winnipeg. However, Hellebuck hasn't been the same goalie as last. He's been good, don't get me wrong, but he hasn't been that lights out guy that he was last year. I had him in my fantasy league last year, picked him up off waivers, and he was just lights out, right? So I think that it's anyone's ballgame. It all depends on, that second line with Line and Hayes. They seemed like they were clicking coming into the end of the year.
Yeah, Kevin Hayes was their big acquisition at the trade deadline.
Yeah.
And he's been Kevin Hayes for them.
Yeah, he's been what you expected.
He's had 20 games with them, 12 points. That's Kevin Hayes.
That's what you're going to expect.
In a bottle.
Yeah. 60 points a year, maybe 50 to 60 points.
Exactly, and that's right where Pacey is.
Bufflin's back healthy now for them. That's going to be a big difference.
Which Bufflin was a huge difference maker for them in the past.
Yeah.
Where if anybody remembers him ragdolling 2 Nashville Predators at once.
I forgot about that, but yeah.
He's a bomb on the ice. He's like having 2 guys on at once. They should get a penalty for too many men every time Dustin Bufflin's on the ice.
And honestly, despite who I want personally to see move through the playoffs, it's almost like you want to see Winnipeg and Vegas go against each other to see Ryan Reeves and Bufflin go up one against each other. You know what I mean? Imagine those two guys.
Yeah,
getting
that would
in a
be
scrap.
phenomenal.
That would be or even just like back and forth in a series would be unreal. So that's a game changer.
Just quickly, who do you think's going to win it? Just quick.
The whole thing or that series?
That series.
I'm going to say Winnipeg.
If I told you that the Blues have given up the fewest goals since February 1st at 72, I can't remember what the next closest to them, but it's phenomenal. But they have given up the fewest goals since February 1st. Does that change your mind about this series at all? Is Bennington enough to make?
No.
Is Bennington going to make the difference for them? Can he keep that going?
No, and the one thing I will say is because of him, and not because he's not a good goalie. And in a year or two, I think he can do that. And I could be completely wrong because there's just special players sometimes it doesn't matter their experience level, but I think experience is going to come into it.
Yeah,
I think the playoffs are a completely different animal. Bennington has been fantastic in the regular season. However, when you get into that pressure-packed situation of the playoffs, Winnipeg has that experience. They've been to the Western Conference Final last year and lost, right? So they've been through that battle. They were battle-tested in that essence, and Hellebuck has been through that. He knows the ups and downs. Especially for a goalie, it's important, right? The mental aspect of staying focused, staying out of the emotional part of it. And I think Bennington that might be a little too much for him. Not that he's going to fall apart or anything. I just don't think he will be the game changer necessarily for them that they may need. I just think Winnipeg will be able to break through in that series. So I wouldn't say it'll change my opinion. That is shocking that they've allowed that few of goals though since that point.
Yeah, it is insane.
So it's going to be a lot closer than people would anticipate, I think.
Well, we'll see. I mean, the Jets definitely have the depth. Scheifele, Wheeler, Kyle Connor, Ehlers, Patrick Laine. I mean, their list of guys is unbelievable. Their power play is 4th in the league. So if the St. Louis Blues want to keep a chance going, they obviously have to stay out of the box against this team, as they are very, very good on the power play. But they also have themselves going as well. So keep the scoring going, keep an up-tempo game going. St. Louis has to try to crack the Winnipeg Jets game plan and make them play outside their comfort zone.
I think it's going to be Winnipeg in 5.
You think Winnipeg in 5?
I do, yeah. I think the experience is going to win out for them.
Wow, I say Winnipeg in 7.
7? Okay.
Yeah, Tarasenko, Shen.
Yeah.
A lot of them, Schwartz. They've all been playing really good hockey lately.
I honestly think it comes down to experience for me. That's going to be the big deciding factor. So we'll see.
Well, Hellebuck has been better in the last 10 games.
Yeah.
But other than that, he's been so-so. But he has returned to his last year's form now.
Yeah, he's been good.
And I also think that teams like this, they know that they're good enough. And like you said about the Capitals too, right? They know they just need to stay consistent enough to get into the playoffs.
Exactly.
And now that they're there, now that they, in the last 10, 20 games of these teams' seasons, some of those clubs have been starting to ramp it up a little bit.
And I think that's going to be the big advantage in a few of these series, definitely, is the experience, right? You have a very interesting mix of teams who have that experience and then teams that don't, obviously. The most interesting series, I think, for that aspect of it is the Calgary-Colorado one, because neither of those teams are overly experienced. I think Calgary's got the least experienced playoff roster. So that'll be interesting because I don't think it's going to be as big a factor in that series as other ones, because neither team has been there a lot. So, but the rest of them, I think it'll be a big difference maker in certain ones, like you said, like Winnipeg and St. Louis. Just that Winnipeg has had more recent experience, and we'll see. So, are you going to venture out there and guess who's the Final 4 or Final 2 winner is? Are you doing that at all? What do you think?
We'll do that next week, eh?
Yeah, we can do that next week.
Let's give ourselves a two-game buffer.
A 2-game buffer. We'll see how teams are doing, and we're gonna be chickens. We won't make those claims on air yet.
That's right. So, I mean, that's it. That's our full lengthy process. I hope you've stayed with us the whole time. If not, oh well, you listened to your team and then you took right off. That's
then
cool.
You left. Too. That's fine. That's what we're here for. So, if you guys are listening, please give us a follow on Facebook. We're the Neutral Zone Canada. You can search that. You'll find us on Facebook. If you go to Twitter, our handle is @NeutralZoneCDN. So go on there, check us out. We're doing different tweets in terms of NHL, more local hockey, things like that. So check us out on there. We're thinking about adding Instagram to that as well, but we'll post our thoughts and our podcast will be available for you guys on iTunes, Google Play, as well as YouTube. We have a YouTube channel. If you want to search that on YouTube, is the Neutral Zone Canada as well. So give us a check us out. Give us a like, a follow, whatever it is, and hit us back. Give us some feedback.
Okay, peace.
Have a good day, guys.